Okay, well, I can start that, and perhaps Michael could add anything. Well, first, they've been very supportive of the new board and our efforts to first develop a strategy and then implement a structure and put the resources in place to ensure that we can implement that strategy. And they've been working very closely with both the board and also the Motat Society around the appointment of board members, so that that process has become much more professional and ensured that board members have the competencies required in order to contribute valuably at the governance level to the museum. I think that they have offered us any support through their own officers, their resources, if we need them to help with anything that where we hadn't had those resources, particularly as we were putting them in place ourselves. I think they've also facilitated our relationships with our other stakeholders, for example, the War Memorial Museum, the zoo, and others, so that while those are natural stakeholder relationships which we have, they've certainly been in the background making sure that those sort of things are encouraged and that Motat's opportunities are maximised. And we've also been involved and invited to participate in the museum's issues paper response, which came out late last year from the RFA. So very much we feel part of the wider group of organisations that are contributing to the arts and culture strategy.
Madam Chair, just to expand on that, from the museum's perspective, the RFA is a very good catalyst for debate for us. It acted as the initial sort of gateway both to the council and to other institutions in Auckland. It was particularly important. They gave me a lot of help and support when I initially arrived into the role, and I have to be frank in saying I was wondering what I had actually got myself into. So they actually helped a lot through that. But I think it's actually acting as that catalyst. They're also a very good sounding board, so we can bounce ideas past them. But the support that they've given goes beyond just acting as the sort of the statutory intermediary between us and the council. It's actually goes into that sort of I don't know how you would describe it, but sort of I would say it's sort of like getting cuddled by somebody. They look after you, and it gives you, when things get really rough, you can ring them up and they will direct you in the right place.
Mentoring.
Helpline.
Yeah, good support.
Helpline, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Casey.
I want to talk about pricing and entry, and the difference between you and the Auckland War Memorial Museum is that you charge entry fees to adults and kids. And I'm wondering if there's any, you mentioned revenue increasing, is there a plan to increase the gate fee?
We have that on our management agenda next week. I have to say I don't know what the recommendation is for that yet, but I would not be looking to increase it. We had a big debate at the board a couple of years ago as to whether we went free entry or not. The view was that given the issues that we face at this current time, having the money coming in helps us implement the strategic plan, and in particular the capital redevelopment side of it. Our feedback from our visitors is positive about our charges. And to bear in mind, the difference between us and the War Memorial Museum is that we do operate a large number of collection objects which are quite expensive to run. And I'm thinking in particular the tram, the railway, and our military vehicles. So it's part of that all-round experience. But the short answer to your question is no, we're not looking, from my perspective, we're not looking to increase it, but we will obviously have that debate, which is one that we have every year.
And Madam Chair, could I just add to supplement Michael's response to Councillor Casey's question? We also provide free entry for gold card members and also for regular visitors, they can buy a Motat Mates Pass, which provides for, I think, $75 for an annual, as many times as you want to come admission. So there are, you know, a range of options for people.
Yes.
Thanks. I've got another question along the same lines. It was something my colleague, Councillor Wood, asked about of the War Memorial Museum, and that was about the south. A $40 family gate charge is a prohibitive cost to a family coming from South Auckland because they have the added expense of getting to Motat. And what I want to ask you about is in 2012 or 2013, there was a series of free days and different parts of Auckland were allowed to come into Motat free. And I'd like to know if there's an analysis of that. 'Cause I would have imagined that the day that you made it free to South Auckland, you were swamped.
No, we weren't. Actually, the ratepayer free entry sort of thing seemed to be, for some reason, attract a lot of people from North Auckland,
Is that right?
particularly the North Shore. The main problem that you have with the
He's putting on buses.
main problem you have with the South Auckland is not so much the entrance charge, and we do bring up, we have a number of initiatives for the schools in that area to bring them into the museum. It's the transport of how do you actually get there. If you can come by public transport without changing buses 4 times, then you're doing really, really well. And let's face it, if you've got kids who are tired, run down and emotional, you don't want to be on a bus. The other thing, which is I will mention in passing it slightly off point, is that car parking in the Western Springs area is under extreme pressure, and that is something that we need to look at, albeit we're trying to encourage people to cycle, walk, etc. to the museum. The ratepayer free entry, the board's view was in 2013 that we should drop it. You either all or nothing, you're either all free or you charge. The halfway house wasn't really working on either front, and by actually charging, and I will say this, is that there was a belief that the museum would be treated with respect, and the objects would be treated with respect. We had one situation where we gave a free-for-all opening to all the ratepayers in Auckland, and we had 80,000 people through that day, and it just pushed the museum beyond its limits. But it is, as I said before, once the museum is stabilised and it's in a different space, and I'd like to think in the not-too-distant future we will be in a very similar space to the War Memorial Museum, we can revisit free entry.
Excellent. I'd like to see that.
Thank you. Councillor Watson.
Yep, and I'm glad to hear that, because I don't think there'll be too many people who can afford to pay $40 for a family. As far as the student admission goes, when schools come, are they given a further discount from the student rate as advertised?
When the school classes come in, that's subsidised by the Ministry of Education. And on we've got as you say, we've got our student entrance rate, and under 5s are free as well. I would say on the $40 entrance fee, that is for a family of 2 adults and 4 kids. So it's not a 2-kid thing, which is what a lot of the other comparable institutions that charge in Auckland have.
And on the aviation wing, did it have the same sort of decline in visitation, or was there a distinction drawn between the aviation and the Motat proper on Western Springs Road?
No, there is no distinction between any of the areas in the museum. It's all treated as one. The interesting thing was when the aviation display hall was opened in 2011, and I wasn't there, but I understand that the strategy behind that was open it in time for the World Cup. We will get lots of people turning up. I think it's fair to say it had the opposite effect, because people that were coming to see the World Cup weren't coming to visit museums. But the visitation numbers for Motat 2, which is where the aviation display area is increasing. We're encouraging people to park at Motat 2 and to take the tram into Motat 1, the other site on Great North Road, because the car parking in that area is reducing, and to also experience the tram. And the tram numbers, the number of people who are using the tram link has increased significantly. As an aside, we're also talking to Auckland Transport at integrating our tram link into their bus link, so as to connect the Miola Road bus to the Great North Road bus, so it's you can go from one to the other. It's early days, and of course that's a big discussion. But no, the aviation display hall is seen as part of one.
Sorry, just one final question. The Solent flying boat restoration, where's that at the moment?
The Solent flying boat restoration is, we got some money from Air New Zealand and we did the interior of the plane. That was quite an extensive restoration. We are in the process of looking at getting sponsorship again to do the outside, to do the paint work on it. But it's a work in progress. These things take time and they are incredibly expensive to do. And we want to do it in accordance with the proper museum procedures. So it's not just a matter of simply painting it. We need to identify what the original parts of the plane are and which were bits that were added and not historically significant, and identify it for future restorations or for the people who are coming in and studying the plane. So it takes a long time to restore these things, so and it's expensive, so we need to get the money for it.
Worth it when it's done, though.
Absolutely. It's the only one in the world.
Thank you. Member Taipari.
Oh, kia ora, Madam Chair. Tēnā kōrero, tēnā iata. I just picked up earlier when you said about the matters that you're doing with Māori, and I thought that was good. But you made some comments about you engaging with, I think, Major Iwi. You said Ngāti Whātua first. So I think my first question is, why them first? My second question is, who else? And my third question is, when will that occur?
Yep. Well, bearing in mind what we're talking about is a period of literally 12 months. We chose Ngāti Whātua in consultation with Hari Williams, who was assisting us on that. We thought that instead of going to 13 iwis in one go, we would start with Ngāti Whātua up at the Aoraki Marae and seek their input on what we were doing. That has gone well, and the idea is to expand that out so that eventually we're engaged with all the local iwi around that area. I think from my perspective, because I'm of Māori descent, I'm Tānui, over and above the biculturalism that's entwined in our act, I think it is critical for the museum to demonstrate that technology didn't just start in 1840, that the technology goes right back to the tangata whenua, and we want to be able to demonstrate that. And in order to do that properly, we need to engage with the local iwis, and that is a plan going forward. But we will need assistance and guidance in that, and I'm very conscious of the fact of not wanting to put our foot in it, so we're going slowly and cautiously forward with that.
So just, Madam Chair, so the answer was Hari Williams gave you that advice?
Correct. Yep.
And the other question about when is, you're not sure?
No, we're starting, it's this year onwards. It's part of our strategic objectives. It's built into our 5-year strategic plan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, and thank you for your report. 2 questions, but both related to volunteers, and we know that there's been, difficulties over time. How is that relationship going with managing volunteers and their input, etc.? And also with new health and safety legislation coming through, how's the board looking to make sure, that the health and safety, especially around volunteers, because we know they put a lot in, but we still need to have really, follow the regulations and make sure they're safe and everybody else is.
Well, thank you for that question, Madam Chair. That was a great opportunity, because the board takes its obligations around health and safety incredibly seriously, and we were quite shocked as a new board coming in only 18 months ago to, as Michael was when he started only 6 months before that, to discover there was a paucity of process and proper duty of care in place. We are an institution, as you know, that uses a lot of old and moving things, and we have a range of visitors from grandmothers down to children and everyone in between, vulnerable people, and we also have staff and volunteers, as you've already mentioned, whom we like to see going home at night with all their parts intact. So we as a board have are supporting Michael with a very strong leadership, commitment and culture to health and safety, and we've had a lot of input from professional people to assist us in that. We employed a health and safety expert on staff, and as a board we regularly have received reports and investigate issues and do site visits and so on, so that we're up to speed with our obligations. Regarding the volunteers, as a board, we don't distinguish between volunteers and staff. We consider them part of the MOTAT team, and our obligations to them both are as strong. So volunteers obviously are unpaid, and they're giving us their time for nothing, but our obligations toward them are equally as strong as they are to our employees. And that goes beyond health and safety, of course, as well. There are other duties of care, like opportunities for development for them, fairness in the way they're treated, and respect, and in accordance with the museum's values. So all of that is something very important to us. And as a result of that, the volunteers are now part of a structure where we are offering them different and more opportunities. We're offering them a structured environment within which to work, where they have to make a commitment to the museum. In other words, because they're a volunteer, it doesn't mean they're not obliged to observe the proper standards of whether it be policy or health and safety or whatever. They've got to be part of the team. So I think, I don't know if that answers both parts.
It does. It's very reassuring. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Clow.
I think my question's been answered.
Okay, thank you. Well, can I thank you very much, both of you? Very interesting. Nice to know. I feel a much better feeling than what we've had over the last few years. As I say, having been there in various guises, it would be great if the museum got up and running the way it used to be. So thank you.
Madam Chair, just on that last note, and I'm not trying to get the last word, but I would like to extend an invitation to all of the Auckland councillors to attend the museum. Our Welcome to the Machine exhibition is still on, and a new exhibition will be opening later this year called Get Smart, and we would really welcome you to the museum, and Michael will coordinate with one of your officers to ensure that that invitation is able to be taken up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would like to move a vote of thanks to Michael and Leslie. I got a seconder for that. Councillor Walker. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Ka kite anō.
Thank you.